Spraylock Nation. Brent and Josh here coming to you again from Studio 37 in our wonderful Chattanooga office. Why Chattanooga? We love Chattanooga. Raised here, love it. It's a beautiful city. We're glad to be here. So today we want to talk about concrete as usual, but we want it a little bit different. We want to talk about the water inside the concrete system. What exactly that does. We get a lot of questions such as, hey, Spraylock guys, if we got a second floor and you're blocking off, where does the water go? So what I'd like to ask you, Brent, is the stages of water inside the concrete system, what it does, where it goes, and exactly what all happens. And then once we get past that, for the normal concrete, the treated systems and where that changes.
Sure, okay. Great topic today. So when you first mix concrete, it's going to be at its greatest volume because it's going to have as much water as it will ever have unless there's extra water added later on down the road. So you have a truck with a load of concrete headed to the job site, right?
Right.
All right, so that concrete gets poured out or placed and finished, and then it begins to lose water. That initial water is known as mixing water, okay? Or in some cases, you'll hear people talk about the water that's above and beyond what's needed for that initial chemical reaction being known as water of convenience. So believe it or not, and I know you know this, but more water is used in concrete. No matter if you have the best admixtures, water reducers in the world, almost always there's more water in that mix than is needed for that initial chemical reaction. So during the setting process, some of that water of convenience has to leave the system through evaporation.
Right.
And while it's evaporating, it forms these little rivers or channels known as bleed water channels.
Yes, sir.
And that capillary structure then becomes hardened and set in the concrete as the concrete sets. So, and it will later be partially filled with future reaction products and those kind of things. But that initial bleed water leaves the system during that first 4 to 6 hours, depending on the temperature and conditions. But then you have additional water after set that is still leaving the concrete, and that's known as evaporable water. That evaporable water is what we try to hold in when we cure concrete.
Right.
As part of the maintaining moisture as part of the curing process.
From initial curing to final curing.
Right. So you're trying to hold that evaporable water in to make it available for those cement hydration products to continue to be formed, because water is needed for that process.
Yeah,
and if you allow it to evaporate too quickly, then
yeah, because water being in concrete is good for concrete.
Yes.
Water coming out of concrete is not exactly what anybody wants.
right. So we want to try to hold that evaporable water in, and that evaporable water can, in some cases, from the concrete itself without any outside source of moisture, sometimes it can be evaporating out of the concrete, depending on weather conditions and all, up to 60, maybe even 90 days, depending on the thickness of the concrete. So that evaporable water is leaving the system, and we want to hang on to it, but with curing, as much as we can. And then you have something called non-evaporable water or bound water, and that bound water is it's held in the system, and it's not going to come out naturally, but it is being bound by reaction products. And we know it's there because we can use an oven or something to heat the concrete up to a point to where it will lose it out of those reaction products. But it's trapped in the concrete to be used at a future date. So that bound water is an important thing to know about too. Water doesn't typically, once the concrete sets, water doesn't typically go down. It's going up because it's an evaporative process. And then finally, you got what I just simply, I think you and I came up with the term together. It's not an official term or anything, but the idea of chemically changed water, that there's a certain amount of water that as it undergoes the cement hydration reactions, that some of that water does become chemically changed, and you're not going to get it out of the concrete because it's a reaction product. And that's really it in summary, is those four main types of water. You have the water of convenience that's leaving through bleed water channels. You have evaporable water, which is the water that we try to hang on to. You have bound water, which is going to be bound between reaction products inside the system. And then you have what we just simply call the water of chemical reaction.
So in a nutshell, we can really base it down to, you said 4, but we could possibly take it down to 2 types. Would you say?
Yeah.
Water needed for cement hydration.
Yes.
And then placement water.
Yeah.
Water that goes in for it to make it easier for the concrete to be placed. And again, but when we're inside the treated system, we're trying to lock up everything but the evaporable water to maintain that hydration process lasting longer to get a better cure.
Well, everything but the bleed water. So the bleed water is going to come out, and then the spray lock product is then sprayed on the surface, and it enters into the bleed water channels that were formed, capillary structure. It goes in and it reacts with available alkalis in the interaction zone, penetrates deeply, and reacts and starts closing the capillary void system with reaction products, or in this case, mostly calcium silicate hydrate, or CSH, is formed, which is the reaction product concrete needs for strength and durability. So it's really putting more concrete in your concrete. It's filling up the capillary void space with more concrete is what's going on. So, and because it's doing that and it's doing it early, it can hold in that some of that evaporable water and help cure the concrete from that perspective.
Because as long as we're getting moisture inside and water inside the concrete, the cement is able to continue hydration.
Yep.
And yes, I did misspoke and said evaporable versus bleed water, and I apologize, but I'm glad I did because it allowed you to give a further
It's
explanation.
common. Yeah, that's a normal. No, I mess it up too. It's something that evaporable water versus bleed water, they're 2 different things, and it's important to keep them straight.
Well, Brent, I appreciate that explanation. If there's anything else we can help you with as far as the water inside and how SCP products work to maintain that moisture presence inside concrete, please let us know.
Thank you so much.